the call from the void, the shadow beneath the neon. Osaka in October 1982 was a city of contrasts. Dotonbori pulsed with neon signs, their colors bleeding into the night, while the chatter of tourists mingled with the sizzle of takoyaki stalls. Yet, a few steps into the narrow alleys revealed a quieter, darker Osaka streets, where moonlight barely reached, casting long shadows over cracked walls. Tucked into one such corner stood the Kogiyama Hotel, a relic of the Tisho era with its grey stone facade and fogged glass windows. Once a haven for wealthy merchants, it now bore a sinister reputation. Locals called it Yurei no Yado, the Inn of Ghosts. Whispers spoke of vanished guests, flickering lights with no source, and an ancient elevator that seemed to move of its own accord. Aki Yamamoto, a 27-year-old reporter for the Osaka Shimbun, arrived at the Kogiyama on a chilly evening. She was chasing a story that could define her career. An anonymous letter sent to her newsroom detailed a series of unexplained disappearances at the hotel, spanning decades. Driven by ambition, Aki dismissed the local superstitions. She wanted facts, no matter how grim. The lobby greeted her with a cold draft, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and faint incense. The receptionist, an elderly woman with sharp, unblinking eyes, handed her a brass key for room 607, 6th floor, she said, her voice low and deliberate. Elevators to the left. Don't linger inside. The elevator was a Taishiura antique, its steel doors etched with faded chrysanthemum patterns. Inside, cracked mirrors lined the walls, distorting Aki's reflection into fractured versions of herself. The control panel was a grid of worn buttons, some numbers illegible, reduced to blank circles. She pressed 6, and the cabin shuddered, groaning as it ascended. The lights flickered, and for a fleeting moment, Aki glimpsed a shadow in the mirror, a vague silhouette that wasn't hers. She blinked, and it was gone. The doors opened to the 6th floor hallway, dark and silent, and she stepped out, her heart beating just a little faster. Whispers of the ritual. Room 607 was small, its dark wooden walls absorbing the dim light from a single bulb. The window overlooked a narrow alley where moonlight tangled with telephone wires. Aki unpacked her tools, a notebook, a tape recorder, and a Polaroid camera, and began jotting down her first impressions. The hotel felt alive, its creaks and groans like the breath of something ancient. That first night was quiet, save for the occasional hum of the elevator, which seemed to run at odd hours. She noted in her journal, elevator moved at 2:47 a.m. No one in the lobby, mechanical fault. The next morning, Aki interviewed the hotel staff, but they were evasive, muttering about old buildings and bad luck. One maid, a young woman named Yumi, lingered longer. In the privacy of a cluttered storage room, she whispered, "Don't use the elevator after midnight. It takes you somewhere else. I saw someone go in once. They never came out." Aki pressed for details, but Yumi shook her head and hurried away. Unable to sleep that night, Aki explored the hotel's small library, a dusty room filled with outdated travel guides and guest ledgers from the Showa era. In a 1935 guest book, she found a handwritten note, its ink faded but legible. The call from the void. To see the truth, enter the elevator at 3:33 a.m. Press the buttons in this order: 6, 4, 8, 2, 9. Do not speak. Do not look behind you. When the doors open, step out, but never look back. The price is time, and it will take what you owe. Aki's pulse quickened. A ritual. It sounded like a prank, but its specificity unnerved her. She copied the instructions, her journalist's instinct overriding her unease. At 3:15 a.m., she stood before the elevator, clutching her notebook, palms slick with sweat. When the clock struck 3:33, she stepped inside and pressed the buttons. 6, 4, 8, 2, 9. The elevator lurched, its lights dimming to a sickly red. The air grew thick, as if the cabin were sinking into a void. She stared at the floor, resisting the urge to glance at the mirrors. The doors opened, and she stepped out, eyes fixed forward. She was no longer in the Kogiyama Hotel, the lantern-lit corridor. The hallway before her was wrong. Its walls were draped in tattered washi paper, illuminated by flickering red paper lanterns that cast a bloody glow. The air was cold, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like old blood. The doors lining the corridor were unmarked. They were warped and stained with dark patches. Aki turned, but the elevator was gone. No call button, no hum of machinery, just a blank wall. Her chest tightened, but she pressed forward, her footsteps muffled by an ancient tatami mat. At the end of the hall was a shoji door, its surface painted with distorted kanji, twisting like the scrawl of a madman. She slid it open, revealing a room bathed in the unsteady light of dying red candles. In the center stood a woman, her back to Aki, her long hair matted and tangled, dressed in a torn kimono. Her hands were clasped, as if in prayer or incantation. The air was oppressive, the room seeming to pulse with a life of its own. "Who's there?" Aki blurted, breaking the ritual's rule of silence. The woman didn't move, but the air grew colder, and a low hum filled the room, like the toll of a distant temple bell. Aki's notebook slipped from her hands, landing with a soft thud on the tatami. The woman's head tilted slightly, and a whisper echoed not from her, but from the walls themselves. "You owe." The floor seemed to shift, and Aki found herself back in the elevator. The doors were closed, the mirrors reflecting her pale, sweat-drenched face. The control panel was blank, no floor number displayed. When the doors opened, she was back in the Kogiyama's 6th-floor hallway, still clutching her notebook. Her watch read 3:34 a.m. Only a minute had passed. She stumbled to her room, locked the door, and sat on the bed, heart pounding. She wrote, "What did I see? Was it real?" The vanishing hours. Aki didn't sleep that night. She sat at her desk, scribbling frantically, trying to make sense of the hallway, the woman, the whisper. It felt too vivid to be a dream, yet her watch and the hotel's clock insisted only a minute had passed. She checked her Polaroid, hoping for evidence, but the film was blank, despite her certainty that she'd taken photos in the lobby the previous day. The next morning, gaps appeared in her memory. She couldn't recall eating breakfast or walking to the lobby. Hours slipped away, leaving her disoriented. She interviewed a guest, an elderly man named Hiroshi Tanaka, who claimed to have stayed at the Kogiyama in 1950. He sat in the lobby, his hands trembling around a teacup. "The elevator," he said, his voice hoarse. "It takes time, not just minutes, years. I went in at 30, came out at 40. No one believed me. They called me mad." He spoke of a drunken night when friends dared him to play the elevator game, a ritual identical to the one Aki had found. He lost a decade, waking in a different era with no memory, no friends, no identity. Aki pressed for more, but Hiroshi grew agitated, knocked over his tea, and fled. That night, she returned to the library, desperate for answers. In a book about Osaka's history, she found another note, this one dated 1940, written in Japanese. "The call from the void takes what you cannot give. It feeds on time, on memory, on will. Do not call it twice." Her hands shook as she read. Had she triggered something irreversible? She resolved to avoid the elevator, but the hotel seemed to conspire against her. The stairwells were locked with heavy padlocks, the fire exits boarded shut. The only way to her room was the elevator. She stood before its doors, hesitating, promising herself she'd only press 6, but as the doors closed, her fingers trembled, and she felt an unseen force urging her to act. The cabin hummed, and she braced herself. The second call, despite her fear, Aki's need for answers overwhelmed her. The next night, at 3:33 a.m., she entered the elevator and pressed the buttons. 64829. The cabin descended, the air growing colder, the hum turning into a wail like wind through a graveyard. When the doors opened, she stepped into a vast room, its walls slick with a black, viscous substance, like ink from another world. In the center stood a massive mirror, its surface rippling like water under moonlight. She approached, drawn irresistibly. Her reflection stared back, but it was wrong. Her eyes were hollow, her skin gray, her mouth twisted into a grin she didn't feel. The reflection spoke, its voice a distorted echo of her own. "You called, now pay." Aki stumbled back, her heart racing. The room dissolved, and she was back in the elevator. The mirrors were gone, replaced by walls etched with names, hundreds, thousands, stretching into infinity. Her own name was there, carved in fresh, bleeding red. She screamed, and the doors opened to the 6th-floor hallway, but something was off. The washi paper on the walls was brighter, the air fresher, the scent of incense gone. Her watch read October 12, 1992, 10 years in the future. She ran to room 607, but it was occupied by strangers. The hotel staff didn't recognize her. Her belongings were gone, her life erased. She opened her notebook, now filled with entries in her handwriting that she didn't remember writing. They detailed years she hadn't lived, a job in Tokyo, a failed marriage, trips she'd never taken. The final entry read, "I called again. It took everything. I am not me anymore." The truth in the mirror. Aki wandered the lobby, now modernized with new carpets and brighter lights, as if the world had moved on without her. She sought out Hiroshi, but the receptionist said he died in 1985, a suicide. She returned to the library, hoping for answers, but the old ledgers were gone, replaced by glossy magazines. A single note, tucked in a journal, was in her handwriting, though she had no memory of it. "Don't call again. It knows your name." In desperation, she performed the ritual one last time. The elevator doors opened to avoid a black expanse where voices whispered her name, her fears, her regrets. At its center was the woman in the kimono, her face now visible. It was Aki, aged and hollow, her eyes glowing with malevolent red light. "You wanted the truth," the figure said. "The truth is, you were never in control. The elevator doesn't take you, it is you. Your curiosity, your ambition, your need to know. You called me, Aki, because I am you." The realization struck like a blade. The ritual didn't summon a demon. It summoned her own darkness, her obsession with uncovering secrets at any cost. Each call had stripped away pieces of her time, memory, identity, till she was a husk, a vessel for the thing she'd become. She tried to run, but the void swallowed her, and the elevator door slammed shut. The endless loop. Aki woke in room 6-7. The date, October 10th, 1982. Her notebook was blank, her camera empty. The ritual note was gone. Had it all been a dream? She avoided the elevator for days, spending her time interviewing more staff and guests, but their answers were vague, their eyes to knowing. In her room, she found an old diary, not hers, but written in a hand eerily like her own. It belonged to a woman named Keiko, who vanished in 1965 after playing the elevator game. The diary ended with, "I called too many times." The hotel seemed to close in around her, the hallways narrowing, the air growing heavier. The staff watched her with smiles too wide, as if they knew something she didn't. On her final night, she couldn't resist. She entered the elevator at 3:33 a.m., pressed the buttons, and whispered, "Who are you?" The cabin plummeted, and when the doors opened, she was back in the lantern-lit corridor, the woman waiting. But this time, Aki didn't run. She stepped forward, embraced the figure, and the world dissolved into darkness. Echoes of the void. The Kogiyama Hotel still stands in Osaka, a shadow amidst Dotonbori's neon glow. Locals avoid it, and tourists report strange dreams, missing hours, and an elevator that never stops on the right floor. Some claim to hear a young woman's voice, whispering from the mirrors, "Call me." The staff deny everything, their smiles polite but cold. In the guest book, a new name appears every few years, written in red ink that never dries. Old diaries vanish, but occasionally, a guest finds a scrap of paper in their room, detailing the ritual of the call from the void. Most discard it as a prank, but some, like Aki, cannot resist the lure. And when they press 648 to 9 at 3:33 a.m., the elevator hums to life, and a piece of them is lost forever.